What happened was I was 6 years old, and Channel 7 here in Chicago ran Marx Brothers movie called The Big Store. The highlight of that movie is the scene where Harpo wanders off into a room, an elegant room in the department store, where there are mannequins dressed in 18th century style, and he has this dream sequence, this fantasy, where he changes places with the mannequin, and he ends up in a wig and another wig, and over his wig, and stockings and the whole 18th century garb, sits down at a harp and plays. And I was so enchanted by this. That was his standard harp solo for the film. And I asked my mother and father, what was this music? And they knew it by the title 18th Century Drawing Room. And my father said, oh, I know what that is. That's by Raymond Scott. So within a couple days, my dad, who is a well-known Chicago DJ and has been, you know, for 40, 45, almost 50 years, and what he brought home was a little 10-inch LP, copyright 1949. It was one of the very first Columbia 10-inch LPs in 1949, called Raymond Scott's Drawing Room. And the lead-off tune, of course, is In an 18th Century Drawing Room, this fantasy on Mozart. Now jump 15 years. I'm a senior in college, and I was home for Christmas once again. This was in Christmas of '72. And I asked my dad about the record, Raymond Scott's Drawing Room. He didn't have, or we destroyed the original copy, but he had another copy of it. And he said, yeah, here it is. My brother and I put it on one Saturday night, and it was almost overwhelming experience, because I hadn't heard the music in 15 years. And what it brought back, in terms of memories of that wonderful fantasy childhood time of 6 years old, that was incredible. But what was now additionally incredible was now I'm a musician with some training and supposedly some knowledge and expertise, and now there's a whole new side of this music that appeals to me. Suddenly I'm listening with totally different ears than I did as a child of 6. Now I'm hearing this incredibly inventive, eccentric music, the music that sprang forth from this guy's mind. In those 2 glorious years, Raymond Scott just went crazy. He wrote all these eccentric little character pieces that are supposedly dance music. Some of them could be danced to, some of them couldn't. But he used this 6-man quintet as his experimental, almost like a keyboard. He used them almost like a machine. And in fact, we now, of course, realize that Raymond Scott was driven by, he was almost obsessed by technology, by electronics, and by the combination of music and the electronic mediums, which were just, of course, in their infancy then. And he was a true pioneer in this regard. And in fact, at one point, he had been interviewed and he theorized, he said, the composer of the future will simply sit on stage and imagine his piece of music and have it instantly created and transmitted to the audience via sound waves. The idealized conception of what the music sounds like at the source, in the brain. And he thought this could actually happen. Maybe it can. But this is the way he thought about music, in a very technical way. So he gets this quintet, these 5 guys, into a rehearsal room, and he was just pretty merciless with them. He'd sit at a piano and he'd say, I want you, Dave, try this. Just play it. It's and Dave would play it. And Dave might say, well, you know, Ray, that doesn't really fall on the instrument very well. It might work on the piano well, but and Scott didn't care. Play it, and Dave Harris could play it. Dave Harris could play anything. So let's play it again and again and again and again, and I'll sit here and I'll do at the piano. And then he'd turn to his clarinetist, Pete Pomilio, and say, Pete, you need to do something like, take this. It's largely modeled on dance music and dance forms then. It has the sound of the 1930s. You know it's out of the 30s. But the man's imagination just went rampant. But he would sit with these guys, and they'd never write anything out. And for years, I was wondering, where were the charts? What did they write? Where is the music? Does it survive? Is it in a library? Is it in a file somewhere? Never wrote a thing of it out. And these guys, the musicians, hated it. They said, we sat there again and again going over this stuff. And of course, they committed it to memory. But that's the way Raymond Scott, he thought that was spontaneous. He thought that was, he said, music, reading music just inhibits you. I just want us to sit. And just as if we were creating it. I'm glad he's experiencing a comeback. And if I can play any part in it, I'm going to.